Let's talk about the NFC South. I'm Tom Vandervoort with Troy Aikman. Falcons, Saints. Is it those two teams in this division competing for the division title?
Yeah, I think so. But Carolina's kind of the dark horse in this deal.
Aren't
yeah,
they?
They are interesting, and had a decent year last year. I mean, Cam Newton and the way that he played probably surprised a lot of people. It certainly did me. It probably overshadowed the fact that they won just 6 games, but I expect that they'll be competing. I mean, I think the thing that you have to remember is every year there's 6 teams that make the playoffs that didn't from the year before,
right.
and so
who are those teams going to be? Right.
And that's been happening for a long time, and so it's hard, and it always has been. It always has been for me. When you look at, okay, who's going to make the playoffs, it's hard not to look at certain teams and think that they're not going to make the playoffs, but yet there are some of those teams, and someone's going to make it that didn't, and Carolina could certainly be that team. But, a lot of discussion about the Saints and everything that they've been through, and they're going to miss Sean Payton. I don't think there's any question about that, and they'll miss some of the other players that won't be playing and what they have to overcome. I think it helps them that they've got a guy like Drew Brees, who in a lot of ways is somewhat of a coach on the field, and he can kind of hold that team together. I think the other thing that helps them a little bit is last year when Sean Payton got injured, Pete Carmichael came in, and he was the one calling the plays, for the first time,
right.
Last year since Sean Payton took over as head coach. So that, I believe, really helps them as they go into this year, that all of a sudden they're not losing their head coach and play caller, they're losing their head coach, but they still got the guy who called plays down the stretch. And so that will help them. I expect the Saints, I expect them to play well. I don't know that they go 13-3 like they did a year ago.
Right.
I don't know if they'd do that even if they didn't go through this whole Bounty Gate thing, but I expect the Saints to be a good football team. Interesting year for the Falcons. 2 years ago they were the number 1 seed in the NFC, didn't win a game in the playoffs. Last year, 10-6. They I hate to say it, they essentially didn't show up against the Giants in that playoff game, and so there's real pressure. I mean, for an organization that hadn't had back-to-back winning seasons, they've done that. Now they've gotten into the postseason, but there's real pressure right now on Mike Smith, and to a little bit of a lesser extent, Matt Ryan, to have a good year, but more importantly, to have a good postseason. But I see this division really between those two teams, but I could see Carolina contending, and if not contending in the division, I could see them potentially as a wild card team.
And what about Tampa Bay? Clearly, they seem to be more in a rebuilding mode. Went through a tough year last year. What can fans expect recently from this team?
I think maybe they're like the 49ers were a year ago. When Jim Harbaugh came in, nobody really expected that they would do much.
That's
but
true.
There they went. They made it to the NFC Championship game. We've seen some of that in years past. I don't anticipate that happening with Tampa Bay, but Coach Shiano, he comes in. He's going to change kind of the way things have been done. Certainly those players will tell you that far different atmosphere and culture there right now than what it was for the last few seasons. And an important year in some ways for Josh Freeman.
Right.
A guy who I haven't had a game of theirs except for had him a few years ago back in his rookie season, had him in a preseason game, and I think he's tremendously gifted. A couple years ago he came on, played well. Last year, I don't want to say took a step backward, but they expected more than what he or the team was able to do. But I like him, I think he'll come out and I think he'll play well this year.
What can happen to a quarterback when he gets off a little bit or stops? He's on a trajectory and then something stops. I think of Sam Bradford as a guy like that, where something has changed. Is there what do you suppose happens in that case?
Well, it's everybody always thinks that this trajectory is like this, whether it's teams or quarterbacks, and we'd all like for that to be, but sometimes there is, it's like the stock market, and so it happens. I think you learn a lot in those situations, I know I did. I know in the years that we were not very good early in my career, I learned the most. And what I learned was that winning in this league is hard. And, maybe that's what he was able to learn last year, that success isn't guaranteed, that it is hard. And you have to continue to put in the time and work at it if you're going to be as good as you hope to be, and that speaks for the team as well.
Yeah, and there's really, you can't avoid having to overcome adversity in professional football.
Well, it's a part of it. You know, I mean, the best teams in the league, the teams that even go on and win the Super Bowl, have to deal with adversity at some point during the season. It's just the way that it is. It's the National Football League, and it's really the teams. You know, think about the Giants last year. I mean, the things that they were able to overcome. The teams that ultimately have great years are the teams that are able to get through those tough stretches that invariably happen each season.
And that seems like where the kind of the culture of the locker room, the head coach, that seems like where all that kind of intangible stuff might come into play.
Yeah, I think how coaches handle those situations, you know, really help a team, you know, as far as how they react. But Tampa Bay is going to be interesting because of some of the changes that have taken place. But I think when you look at the South, I still believe it's coming down to the Saints and the Falcons.
And if I had to pin you down to the Saints or the Falcons, who would you pick?
You know, I'm gonna.
Gotcha on this one, huh?
Well, I mean, I do like them both. I could make a case for both of them, but I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints.
There you go. New Orleans Saints overcoming Bountygate. For Troy Aikman, I'm Tom Vandervoort. Thanks for watching.